I'm Mehta, Editor-in-Chief of Breaking Defense. We're here at the Reagan Defense Forum in Simi Valley, California. I'm going to sit down and talk with Mara Karlin, who's the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy Plans Capabilities, about the National Defense Strategy, the rollout of that document, and frankly, what's in it. All right, well, Dr. Mara Karlin, thank you so much for joining us here today. I want to talk a little bit about the National Defense Strategy, which came out a couple of weeks ago. Could you just give us maybe the top 2 or 3 key points out of the strategy?
Thanks so much for having me today, Aaron. I'm delighted to talk about the National Defense Strategy. So if there are only 2 things that you know about this National Defense Strategy, let me tell you what they are. Number 1, for the very first time in the Department of Defense's history, we did all of our major strategies together. National Defense Strategy, Nuclear Posture Review, Missile Defense Review. That meant that we had intellectual coherence. It also meant that as we were building our budget, we had resource coherence as well. That's number 1 big takeaway. Number 2 big takeaway is the priority. This strategy is focused on the urgent need to sustain and strengthen deterrence, focused on the People's Republic of China as our pacing challenge.
So obviously this was worked on before Russia invaded, and that term pacing challenge is something that we've seen in reference to China. Russia's gotten kind of a different phrase to it attached now.
Absolutely. So we refer to Russia as an acute threat. We chose that word deliberately. By acute, we really mean sharp and we mean immediate. And I think that we have seen that quite profoundly. You know, while the strategy was written and largely built before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we frankly had Russia's playbook. And so we were really able to bake in what they were trying to do as we were looking, as we were trying to think through the strategy.
All right, so can you talk me a little bit through what the feedback's been? Because obviously this has been rolled out in a classified form to Congress earlier in the year. Now it's been made public. A lot of the allies have been kind of digesting it. What are you hearing from it?
So you're right. We delivered the strategy to Congress with the budget, a classified strategy in March with the budget. And that was because, frankly, it was important to help Congress see that the resources we were asking for, the largest budget request in Department of Defense history, really was undergirded by this strategy. And then, of course, we came out with the unclassified one pretty recently. The feedback on the whole has been very positive. I think our allies, our partners, our Congress understand this urgent need to focus on the People's Republic of China.
So let me ask about integrated deterrence, which is a phrase that's been floating out there since the Biden administration kind of start in bits and pieces, but the NDS was kind of the official rollout of the phrase, if you will. Can you define integrated deterrence and maybe talk a little bit about how that actually is going to play out in the real world?
Absolutely. I find it useful to think about it separately, integrated and then deterrence, to really understand the concept. Who's integrating? 3 groups. Inside the Department of Defense, across the U.S. government, and with our allies and partners. And we all have a role to play. So inside the Department of Defense, we've got to look across domains, we've got to look across the spectrum of conflict. Across the interagency, every department and agency really needs to push their comparative advantage, and our allies and partners, our unparalleled network of allies and partners, we all need to work together to deal with a security environment that is increasingly complex and complicated. That's the integrated piece. The deterrence piece. You know, in a lot of the post-9/11 wars, the notion of deterrence kind of atrophied. It wasn't as relevant when we were looking at threats like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. But it really is relevant now when we are looking at challenges like the People's Republic of China or threats like Russia. And so what we want to do is evolve our thinking on deterrence. So it's important to think about things like deterrence by denial of benefits, making sure that an adversary can't achieve what they're trying to do, deterrence by cost imposition, making it really painful for them to do it, but also evolving our thinking to include ideas like deterrence by resilience, making it so that we can bounce back from various challenges. So that's the concept of integrated deterrence. It involves these groups trying to really show, here's our capabilities, here's our intent.
Could you maybe use Ukraine as an example of kind of how this plays out? Because a lot of what you just said, I think, obviously fits into the paradigm of what's going on there.
Absolutely. So inside the Department of Defense, we have needed to make sure we have a combat credible force to ensure that NATO is safe and secure. And I think that that has been done masterfully. As you might recall, early in the conflict, we were able to surge more than 20,000 U.S. troops to Europe extremely quickly. And we did that because we had pre-position equipment, we had all of the necessary agreements with our allies and our partners. So that was part of what we had to do inside the department. The other thing that we had to do is make sure that we could help support Ukraine's military with asymmetric capabilities. And I think we have done that in spades, as you have seen. And when I say we, frankly, it's also our allies and partners. It is extraordinary to watch Every single month, Secretary of Defense Austin brings together more than 45 allies and partners who all sit together and think through how best to support Ukraine's military. And we see the fruits of that on the battlefield every single day. And across our interagency, right, we have seen the impact of our Treasury colleagues with their sanctions, for example, targeting Russia's economy. So I think we have a nice case study where inside the department we've had a real focus on ensuring that we've got a combat credible force securing NATO, that we can support Ukraine's military. Across the interagency, we've been able to play to our comparative advantages across departments and agencies and our allies and partners, who not only are helping Ukraine, but are also investing in their own defense budgets and in their own force postures.
There has been a little bit of pushback or questioning, I would say, in some think tanks and from other folks about integrated deterrence as a concept and why it seems to reside inside DoD as opposed to being something driven more by the White House. What are your kind of response to that?
My response to that would be read the national security strategy. President Biden put out a smart national security strategy, which you will see intellectually very much aligns with the national defense strategy. That's frankly because we all work so closely together. But there's an entire section on integrated deterrence. And I think you see that complementarity. This is a topic that involves us, but it involves all of these cohorts as well. And I think that's clearly illustrated by that national security strategy.
All right, Mara Karlin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
For more from the Reagan Forum, stay to breakingdefense.com. I'm Mehta.